The research station hung in the darkness between stars like a forgotten ornament, its metal hull reflecting nothing but the distant glow of nebulae too far to matter. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck, watching the scanners pick up something that shouldn't exist in this empty region of space. A vessel without markings or identification signals, drifting through the void with deliberate slowness that suggested purpose rather than accident. Still no response to our hails. Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported from the communications console, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed nothing but static and silence. The kind of silence that made experienced spacers nervous, because space was never truly quiet unless something wanted it that way. Sarah had served in deep space for 15 years and learned to trust her instincts when they screamed warnings. This situation felt wrong in ways she couldn't articulate to her crew without sounding paranoid. The mysterious ship matched their velocity perfectly, despite showing no active propulsion signatures, maintaining a distance that was neither threatening nor friendly, but somewhere unsettlingly between. "What do we know about that design?" she asked her science officer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had been cross-referencing every database available to the station's computers for the past 3 hours. Yuki looked up from her screens, with frustration evident in her expression. Dark circles under her eyes from too many consecutive shifts. "Nothing matches, Captain. The hull configuration doesn't align with any known civilization in our records. Galactic Council species, independent colonies, even the isolationist groups all have distinctive architectural signatures. But this vessel shows elements from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously." The ship resembled a crystal grown in impossible directions, facets catching light that shouldn't reach this far into the dark. Its size difficult to judge, because it seemed to shift perspectives depending on viewing angle. Sensor readings fluctuated between classifying it as a small courier and a massive dreadnought, with nothing to explain the discrepancy. "Could it be a first contact situation?" Marcus suggested, hope coloring his voice, because humanity still remembered the wonder of meeting their first alien civilization, despite decades having passed since that historic moment. Sarah wanted to share his optimism, but command experience taught caution. If it's first contact, they're being remarkably coy about it. Most species looking to establish relations don't play hide-and-seek in dead space. The station's proximity alarm suddenly activated, with gentle chimes that seemed too polite for the spike of adrenaline they triggered. The mysterious vessel had moved closer by several thousand kilometers in the span of seconds, without any visible acceleration. Reality itself seemed to have rearranged. "To place it nearer." "Battle stations," Sarah ordered calmly, watching her crew move with practiced efficiency that came from drills repeated until muscle memory replaced thought. Humanity had learned the hard way that peaceful intentions required strength to back them up, in a galaxy where not everyone shared Earth's diplomatic philosophy. Shields hummed to life around the station, defensive grids that could theoretically withstand anything short of a sustained military assault from Council warships. Weapon systems remained powered, but not armed, because firing first had political consequences that could end careers and start wars. The alien ship did nothing threatening in response to their defensive posture. It simply existed in space with unnerving stillness, while scanners struggled to penetrate whatever materials composed its hull. Energy readings spiked and fell in patterns that resembled communication attempts, but followed no known linguistic. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Yuki announced, her voice taking on the careful tone scientists used when reporting data they didn't trust. "There are life signs aboard that vessel, but they're not registering as any biological pattern in our database. It's like the sensors can't decide what they're detecting." Sarah moved to stand behind Yuki's station, studying the fluctuating readouts that painted contradictory pictures of the ship's interior. One moment showing a crew of 3, the next indicating hundreds, biological signatures transforming into mechanical ones, and back again without explanation. "Could be sensor malfunction," Marcus offered weakly, though everyone in the room knew their equipment had been maintained to specifications that made failure statistically improbable. Or deliberate jamming, Sarah countered, mind racing through tactical possibilities and diplomatic protocols simultaneously, because command meant balancing both. They could be masking their true numbers and nature. The communications console erupted with sound that made everyone jump. Not the clean tones of standard hailing frequencies, but something organic and musical. Notes that seemed to bypass ears entirely and resonate in bone and blood. Marcus slapped controls frantically, trying to modulate the signal into something comprehensible. Words formed eventually, not in any single language, but somehow understood by every member of the crew, despite speaking different native tongues. The translation bypassed technology entirely and planted meaning directly into consciousness with precision that felt invasive yet gentle. "We mean no harm to the humans of this station," the voice said without saying, existing in thoughts rather than sound. "We have traveled far to find you, following signatures of curiosity and compassion that shine through the darkness between stars like beacons, calling to those who know how to perceive such." Sarah forced her voice to remain steady, despite the surreal nature of their contact. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of Research Station Meridian. Identify yourself and state your intentions." Silence stretched for heartbeats that felt like hours before the response came. "We are called the Wanderers by some, the Silent Ones by others. Our species has no name in your linguistic frameworks, because we abandoned such limitations long ago, when we transcended physical forms that required designation. We exist now as patterns of thought and energy, seeking understanding across the cosmos." The science officer's hands shook slightly as she tried to record data that instruments couldn't properly measure. "Captain, this is unprecedented. If they're telling the truth, we're dealing with a post-physical civilization, something theoretical models suggested might exist, but we've never encountered." Sarah's mind churned through implications, while maintaining the appearance of calm command. "Why seek us out specifically?" Humanity isn't the most advanced species in known space. Advancement is measured differently by those who have moved beyond competition for resources, the Wanderers replied, their thought voice carrying nuances of emotion that felt alien yet recognizable. "We seek those who ask questions rather than claim answers, who reach toward stars with wonder intact, despite discovering the universe holds dangers. Your species interests us because you maintain hope as a core principle, rather than abandoning it for cynicism." The observation deck fell silent except for the ambient hum of station systems, every crew member processing the weight of what they were hearing. Humanity had been evaluated by something beyond their comprehension, and apparently found worthy of contact for reasons that challenged conventional understanding of galactic politics. "What do you want from us?" Sarah asked the question that mattered most. Only conversation came the answer that changed. "Everything." The next 72 hours transformed Research Station Meridian from an isolated outpost into the center of something unprecedented in human history. Captain Sarah Chen found herself coordinating with Earth authorities through quantum communication channels that normally remained silent for months at a time. Every scientific organization and political entity wanted access to the Wanderers, despite understanding almost nothing about them. The alien vessel remained at its chosen distance, neither approaching nor retreating, while maintaining that unnerving, perfect stillness that defied physics. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had given up trying to categorize it using conventional methods, and instead focused on documenting the ways it broke her instrument's assumptions about reality. "They're not violating physical laws so much as operating on principles we haven't discovered," she explained during the daily briefing, exhaustion making her words slightly slurred despite chemical stimulants keeping her functional. Imagine trying to explain quantum mechanics to someone who only understands Newtonian physics. That's approximately our position relative to Wanderer technology. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, had taken charge of communication protocols, developing methods for the crew to interface with thought-voice transmission without psychological stress. Some team members adapted easily to the direct mental contact, while others experienced disorientation that required breaks. Humanity had never needed training for telepathic conversation before, because telepathy existed only in fiction until now. Sarah reviewed reports while nursing coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Her third consecutive shift in the command chair because sleep felt impossible when history unfolded in real time. The Wanderers had been patient with human curiosity and answered questions with patience that suggested they experienced time differently than biological beings. "Meet face to face," Marcus announced from the communication station, his expression uncertain about how to interpret the request, or whatever equivalent they have to faces. The translation gets fuzzy around physical descriptions. "Invite them aboard?" Sarah asked, already knowing the answer would complicate everything, because allowing unknown entities onto the station meant accepting vulnerability that military advisors back on Earth would hate. "They're suggesting neutral ground instead," Marcus clarified while pulling up new data. "They can manifest a physical form temporarily in open space if we're willing to send representatives. Something about reducing stress on both parties by meeting an environment neither controls." Yuki immediately objected on safety grounds. "We have no way to verify the conditions they create will sustain human life. This could be attempted abduction or elimination of witnesses. Or they're genuinely trying to accommodate our needs," Sarah countered, while analyzing her science officer's concerns for validity. "Everything so far suggests peaceful intent. Refusing could insult them." The debate continued for another hour, with input from Earth authorities who offered opinions from light minutes away, making their advice outdated before it arrived. Eventually, Sarah made the command decision that would define her career regardless of outcome. She would lead the human delegation personally with volunteers from her crew. 6 hours later, Sarah floated in a hard suit outside the station, tethered by safety lines that felt psychologically comforting, despite being functionally useless if the Wanderers proved hostile. Marcus and Yuki accompanied her, along with engineer Chen, who insisted his technical expertise might prove valuable. The space between station and alien vessel rippled like water disturbed by stones. Reality folded into configurations that hurt to perceive until human brains adjusted. Accepted the impossible. A platform materialized from nothing, solid enough to register on sensors, but composed of materials that defied analysis. "Atmosphere forming," Yuki reported, with wonder overwhelming her scientific detachment. "Breathable mixture, Earth-standard pressure, temperature within comfortable range for humans. They've created a pocket environment specifically for us." The Wanderers took form gradually, coalescing from patterns of light and thought into shapes approximating humanoid structure. They stood roughly 2 meters tall, with proportions slightly wrong in ways that triggered uncanny valley responses. Faces that were almost human, but featured eyes too large and mouths that didn't quite move correctly when thought voice spoke. "Forgive the appearance," the lead Wanderer communicated, gender and individual identity ambiguous in ways that made personal pronouns feel inadequate. "We remember physical existence imperfectly after so long. Representation combines elements from various species we've encountered, attempting to find forms you might find approachable rather than disturbing." Sarah removed her helmet after sensors confirmed the atmosphere's safety, breathing air that tasted of nothing while examining beings that shouldn't exist. "You've been physical before?" "Millions of your years ago," came the response carrying weight of epochs beyond human comprehension. "We evolved on world now lost to stellar collapse, achieved technology, explored our region of space, made the usual mistakes young civilizations make when discovering they're not alone. Eventually, we learned to separate consciousness from biological limitation and transcended into this current state. Marcus struggled with recording equipment that couldn't properly capture beings made of organized energy. Why give up physical form? Necessity initially, the Wanderer explained, while gestures that might have been hands moved. Through air, our sun died before we developed faster-than-light travel. The choice was extinction or evolution. We chose to continue existing in new ways rather than cling to old patterns. Afterward, we discovered advantages to existence as pure consciousness, traveling between stars at thought speed, experiencing reality without sensory limitations, accumulating knowledge across galaxies. P. Yuki's scientific curiosity overcame her caution completely. What do you want from humanity specifically? P. The Wanderer shifted form slightly, becoming more defined, as if focusing helped maintain physical manifestation. Perspective. Younger species experience existence with intensity we've lost over eons. You feel emotions strongly, create art from suffering and joy, fight against entropy with determination born from knowing your individual lives end. We've forgotten what it means to be truly alive, rather than merely existing. P. Sarah understood suddenly what this meeting truly represented. You're lonely. The Wanderers didn't deny it, their thought voice carrying undertones of melancholy that transcended language barriers. We are the last of our kind. Others like us exist, but scattered across distances even we find challenging. We seek connection with biological civilizations to remember what we've sacrificed, to vicariously experience the passion of finite existence. Humanity interested us because your broadcasts into space carry hope despite acknowledging darkness. Your stories celebrate survival and connection rather than conquest. Engineer Chen spoke for the first time since boarding the platform, his voice rough with emotion. You came light years to feel something. Yes, the Wanderers confirmed simply. The conversation continued for hours as humans and post-physical beings exchanged perspectives across evolutionary chasms. The cultural exchange between humanity and the Wanderers developed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Captain Sarah Chen watched as her research station transformed into a hub of philosophical and scientific interaction that attracted attention from every major civilization in the sector. The Galactic Council sent observers. Independent species sent delegations. Everyone wanted access to beings who had transcended physical limitation and lived to speak of it. Dr. Yuki Tanaka established what she called the Archive of Experiences, a collaborative project where humans shared art and music and literature, while Wanderers contributed knowledge accumulated across millions of years. The exchange proved challenging because biological and post-physical perspectives on reality diverged in fundamental ways that made mutual understanding difficult, but rewarding. They don't experience time linearly, Yuki explained, during briefings that now included representatives from a dozen species. For Wanderers, past and future exist simultaneously in ways our brains can't process. They remember things that haven't happened yet, and experience present moments as echoes of ancient history. Trying to establish common reference points requires completely rethinking how we structure information. Lieutenant Marcus Webb had become unofficial liaison between species, his natural empathy helping bridge gaps that pure logic couldn't cross. He organized sessions where humans performed live music for audiences of energy beings who experienced sound as visible patterns in space-time. The Wanderers found human emotional response to rhythm fascinating because their own existence had become too ordered for chaos to inspire feeling. They cry, Marcus reported with wonder, after one particularly moving concert featuring ancient Earth compositions. Or whatever equivalent they have, their energy patterns fluctuate in ways their translator describes as weeping. They're moved by our capacity for creating beauty from mathematical principles. Sarah spent her time navigating political complexities that came with hosting interspecies exchange. The Galactic Council worried that Wanderer technology might destabilize existing power structures if shared too freely. Military factions from various civilizations wanted to weaponize post-physical knowledge. Commercial interests sought exclusive access for profit. Everyone had agendas that threatened the pure scientific and cultural goals of the project. "We must establish protocols," insisted Ambassador Thorvik, a Centauran whose species had been spacefaring when humanity still lived in caves. His crystalline body refracted light in patterns indicating stress. The Wanderers possessed knowledge that could revolutionize or destroy civilizations depending on application. Unrestricted sharing risks catastrophe. Sarah met his concerns with calm determination born from weeks of similar arguments. The Wanderers chose humanity for first contact precisely because we haven't weaponized every discovery. They value our tendency toward cooperation over domination. Restricting access contradicts the spirit of their offer. The debates continued while actual exchange progressed in laboratory spaces and observation decks across the station. Humans learned that consciousness could exist independent of biological substrate through techniques the Wanderers shared cautiously, understanding that such knowledge carried dangers for species still attached to physical forms. Engineer Chen became obsessed with Wanderer descriptions of their transformation process, spending days in conversation with beings who remembered the transition from biological to energy-based existence. They say the key is maintaining continuity of self while releasing attachment to physical sensation. He explained to colleagues who worried about his mental state. Consciousness persists, but it's not life as we understand it either. They exist in state between that our language can't properly describe. Yuki approached Sarah privately with concerns that went beyond science. Some crew members are becoming too interested in transcendence. They're asking Wanderers how to abandon their bodies and join them as energy beings. We're not ready for that kind of transformation culturally or psychologically. Sarah had noticed the same troubling trend. Young scientists and engineers, seduced by promises of immortality and unlimited knowledge. Have the Wanderers encouraged this? Actually, no, Yuki admitted. They actively discourage it, claim that abandoning physical form before a species reaches natural evolutionary point causes trauma that damages consciousness permanently. They recommend humanity continue developing for at least another 1,000,000 years before considering transcendence. The revelation provided relief, but also raised questions about Wanderer motivations. If they weren't recruiting biological beings to join their ranks, then what did they truly seek from these exchanges? Sarah decided to ask directly during their next private communication session. The lead Wanderer manifested in her ready room without announcement, having learned that humans found unexpected materialization unsettling. Its form had stabilized into something more consistently humanoid through practice. "You wish to understand our purpose, Captain Shen? Your presence attracts attention that complicates station operations," Sarah stated honestly. "Multiple civilizations compete for access, while some crew members develop unhealthy fascination with transcendence. I need to know what you're actually trying to accomplish." The Wanderer's energy form pulsed with colors that might have indicated emotional states. "We seek nothing more than stated initially, connection with biological life to remember what we've lost. Your species provides unique perspective because humans balance logic with emotion in ways we find beautiful. You create meaning from temporary existence rather than despairing over mortality." "But you could interact with any species," Sarah pressed. "Why specifically humans?" "Because you still dream," came the response carrying weight of profound truth. "Other civilizations we've contacted lost imagination as they gained knowledge, became efficient but sterile in their understanding. Humanity dreams of impossibilities and sometimes makes them real through determination. You write stories where hope triumphs over despair, not through logic, but through refusal to accept defeat. That quality fascinates us." Sarah considered the answer while station alerts chimed with incoming vessels. More delegations arriving daily to study the phenomenon occurring at Meridian. What happens when this exchange ends? Do you move on to another species? Wanderer admitted. But we've learned patience over eons. We might maintain contact with humanity for thousands of your years, if the relationship proves mutually beneficial. We have time for long conversations. The implications staggered Sarah's imagination. Humanity gaining access to millions of years of accumulated knowledge and perspective. What do we offer in return that makes this worthwhile for you? The Wanderer's form shifted into something approaching a smile. You remind us why existence matters beyond mere continuation. 3 months after first contact, the situation at Research Station Meridian had evolved into complex diplomatic crisis that threatened to overshadow the cultural exchange's original purpose. Captain Sarah Chen found herself mediating between factions that viewed Wanderer presence through lenses of opportunity, threat, or spiritual revelation, depending on their species' philosophical framework. The Galactic Council had established permanent presence aboard the station, their representatives monitoring all interactions between humans and Wanderers with bureaucratic intensity that slowed everything to frustrating crawls. Ambassador Thorvik led a coalition demanding regulation of knowledge transfer to prevent destabilization of existing power structures. You must understand the dangers, Thorvik argued during emergency session in the station's largest conference space, his crystalline body reflecting harsh lights that gave his words visual emphasis. The Wanderers possess technology and understanding that could render current defense systems obsolete. Allowing unrestricted access threatens the security framework, maintaining peace across hundreds of systems. Sarah listened to arguments she'd heard repeatedly, while maintaining diplomatic composure that masked growing frustration. The Wanderers have shown no interest in providing weapons technology. They share philosophical and artistic knowledge that threatens no one. Knowledge itself is weapon, countered General Vok, a military representative from the Draconian Collective, whose species valued strength above all other virtues. His scaled face showed contempt for what he considered Sarah's naivety. Understanding consciousness manipulation could let hostile actors control populations. Energy being transformation might create unstoppable soldiers. Information without restriction endangers everyone. Dr. Yuki Tanaka interjected with data compiled from months of careful study. Analysis shows Wanderers actively withhold anything that could be weaponized. They're selective about shared knowledge in ways that demonstrate ethical consideration beyond most biological civilizations. The debate continued for hours without resolution, political interests clashing with scientific curiosity, while actual exchange happened in laboratories, where researchers from multiple species worked alongside Wanderers to understand reality's deeper patterns. Humans had become facilitators rather than primary participants, as other civilizations sent their best minds to learn. Lieutenant Marcus Webb struggled with coordination challenges that came from managing dozens of research teams with conflicting methodologies and goals. The Cathar want to study Wanderer energy patterns for propulsion applications, while the Valorian delegation insists on prioritizing consciousness research. Everyone thinks their project deserves exclusive access and resources. With his frustration, while dealing with her own mounting pressures, Earth authorities wanted humanity to maintain special relationship with Wanderers, given first contact status. Other species argued that knowledge should benefit everyone equally. Finding balance proved nearly impossible when every decision created winners and losers. The Wanderers themselves seemed confused by political complexity surrounding their presence, having abandoned such considerations when they transcended beyond resource scarcity. Why do biological beings complicate simple sharing of perspectives? They asked during private session with Sarah, genuine bewilderment evident in thought voice patterns. Because we're still limited by physical needs, Sarah explained while rubbing exhausted eyes. Resources remain finite for species that require food and space and energy. Knowledge represents power that could shift balances we've established carefully over centuries. But creates anxiety in civilizations that maintain security through technological advantage. The lead wanderer's form flickered with what might have been sadness. We hoped biological species would cooperate when presented with opportunities for mutual advancement. Perhaps we misunderstood the nature of physical existence more than we realized. Their disappointment struck Sarah harder than any political pressure. Don't lose faith in us. We're trying to navigate systems that developed over millennia. Change happens slowly for beings with limited lifespans, because we think in generations rather than eons. Your species shows promise despite these limitations, the Wanderer assured her. Humans advocate for equal access, even when exclusive control would benefit you politically. That generosity distinguishes you from many civilizations we've encountered. The encouragement helped Sarah face the continuing crisis. Over the following weeks, she worked to establish a framework for managed knowledge exchange that satisfied security concerns while maintaining the collaborative spirit that attracted wanderers initially. The compromise pleased no one completely, but allowed research to continue. Engineer Chen had breakthrough that shifted perspectives when he successfully demonstrated limited consciousness projection, separating his awareness from physical form for brief moments while wanderers stabilized the connection. The achievement proved biological beings could learn post-physical techniques without abandoning bodies entirely. It's like dreaming while awake, Chen described to packed auditorium of scientists from dozen species. You exist in two states simultaneously, aware of physical form while also experiencing reality as pure consciousness. The wanderers guide you through the process so you don't lose connection to your body. The demonstration sparked renewed interest in wanderer knowledge, while reducing fears about cultural contamination. If beings could explore transcendent states temporarily without permanent transformation, the knowledge seemed less threatening. Other species began successfully replicating Chen's techniques with wanderer assistance. Yuki expanded her archive of experiences to include consciousness projection sessions where biological beings and wanderers shared perspective directly. This is the real breakthrough, she told Sarah excitedly. When you experience reality from their viewpoint, you understand why they value connection over conquest. It's transformative in ways that simple information transfer can't achieve. Sarah hesitated before agreeing to try projection herself. Command responsibilities made her cautious about anything that might impair judgment, but curiosity eventually overcame concern. Chen and the wanderers guided her through meditation that released her awareness from physical constraints. The experience defied description afterward. Sarah perceived station and surrounding space simultaneously from every angle, felt the thoughts of crew members as gentle presence rather than invasive violation, understood on visceral level the loneliness that drove wanderers to seek biological contact. Minutes stretched into subjective hours before Chen's voice called her back to physical form. I understand now, Sarah told the lead wanderer after recovering from disorientation. You're not just lonely, you're disconnected from the immediate reality in ways that make existence feel hollow. We remind you what it means to be present in moments rather than experiencing everything at once. The wanderer's energy form brightened with validation. Yes, biological existence grounds meaning in ways we've forgotten. Your limited perspectives create intensity of experience we can only remember rather than truly feel anymore. This exchange benefits us as much as it does your species. The revelation helped Sarah articulate new vision for the project to skeptical council representatives and Earth authorities. She proposed expanding exchange beyond Meridian to include multiple stations where different species could interact with wanderers in controlled environments, spreading benefits and risks equally across civilizations. The proposal faced resistance, but eventually gained support when wanderers agreed to limitations on sensitive knowledge sharing and accepted monitoring that satisfied security concerns without restricting cultural exchange. 6 months after first contact, Research Station Meridian had transformed into the nucleus of a network spanning dozens of systems. Captain Sarah Chen watched holographic displays showing similar exchange stations established by the Galactic Council, where biological species from across known space learned from wanderers while sharing their own unique perspectives on existence. The project exceeded original scope in ways that both thrilled and terrified Sarah. Humanity had initiated something that might reshape galactic civilization's understanding of consciousness, mortality, and meaning. The responsibility weighed heavily, despite spreading across multiple species and governing bodies. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's archive of experiences had become a repository of knowledge unprecedented in scale, combining wanderer memories spanning millions of years with artistic and scientific achievements from hundreds of biological civilizations. "We're creating something that will outlast our generations," Tanaka noted. "Individual lives," she told Sarah during rare quiet moment in observation deck. "Future generations will study these records to understand the moment when biological and post-physical beings truly connected." Lieutenant Marcus Webb had evolved from communication liaison into something approaching cultural ambassador, traveling between stations to help new species adapt to wanderer contact and establish exchange protocols that balance security with openness. "Every civilization struggles with the same fears initially," he reported, during one of his brief returns to Meridian. "They worry about losing what makes them unique if they share too freely, but they also can't resist the opportunity to learn from beings who've transcended physical limitation." The Galactic Council had established regulatory framework that Sarah helped design, creating ethical guidelines for consciousness research and knowledge exchange that most species accepted as reasonable compromise between unrestricted access and paranoid restriction. Enforcement remained challenging, but the structure existed for first time in galactic history. Earth authorities celebrated humanity's role in facilitating unprecedented cooperation between civilizations, while quietly worrying that the project might eclipse other human achievements. Admiral Rodriguez contacted Sarah personally during one of his inspection tours to express concerns that went beyond official channels. "We're proud of what you've accomplished," he told her in her ready room, his weathered face showing strain from political pressures Sarah could only imagine. "But Earth's population is divided on whether this exchange benefits humanity specifically or just serves as stepping stone for other species. Some argue we should have maintained exclusive relationship with wanderers rather than sharing access." Sarah had expected such criticism and prepared her response carefully. "The wanderers chose humanity first," she said. "Contact because they valued our collaborative nature. Betraying that trust by hoarding access would have proven their assessment wrong. We've gained more influence through generosity than we could have achieved through exclusivity." Rodriguez nodded acceptance, if not complete agreement. "The politicians back home will complain regardless, but I wanted you to know that most of us understand the choice you made. History will remember this moment as when humanity helped unite civilizations through shared curiosity rather than military alliance." The conversation left Sarah contemplating legacy beyond her own career. Thousands of years from now, beings might study this period as turning point in galactic development. The thought inspired and intimidated in equal measure. Engineer Chen had become leading expert on consciousness projection techniques, training researchers from multiple species in methods for safely exploring non-physical states. His work demonstrated that biological beings could learn from wanderers without abandoning what made their species unique: synthesis rather than transformation. "We're developing new art forms," Chen explained excitedly to anyone who would listen, combining physical and energy-based perspectives to create experiences impossible for either biological or post-physical beings alone. It's collaborative creativity on level never achieved before. The wanderers themselves had changed through contact with biological civilizations. Their energy patterns showed greater complexity and variation than when they first arrived. "You've reminded us why we chose existence over extinction," the lead wanderer told Sarah during one of their regular discussions. "We remembered intellectually that consciousness was worth preserving, but had forgotten the emotional truth of why existence matters. Your species, and others we've met through you, have rekindled something we thought lost forever." Sarah found satisfaction in knowing the exchange benefited both sides genuinely. "What happens next for you? Do you move on eventually, or maintain contact?" "We've decided to establish permanent presence in this region of space," the wanderer revealed. "Creating network of consciousness that can interact with biological civilizations, while exploring what might develop from long-term connection. Perhaps in millions of years, new hybrid forms of existence will emerge that combine biological immediacy with post-physical perspective." The vision staggered Sarah's imagination. Humanity and other species potentially evolving alongside wanderers, toward futures neither could achieve alone, will be long dead before those possibilities manifest. "Individual biological beings, yes," the wanderer agreed, "but your civilizations will continue, each generation building on knowledge accumulated by predecessors. You experience time as succession of moments, but together you achieve immortality through cultural continuity. We find that beautiful in ways our eternal individual existence cannot match. This is important." The following weeks brought new challenges as expansion continued. Some stations reported difficulties with species whose philosophical frameworks made wanderer contact disturbing rather than enlightening. Religious groups from multiple civilizations protested what they saw as abandonment of faith in favor of scientific transcendence. Sarah worked with council representatives to address concerns while maintaining exchange programs' integrity. "We're not pushing anyone toward transcendence," she assured religious leaders during tense negotiation session. The wanderers actively discourage premature transformation and respect that many species find meaning through connection to physical existence and spiritual beliefs. The reassurances helped reduce tensions, though some groups remained suspicious. Sarah accepted that universal approval was impossible when dealing with fundamental questions about consciousness and existence. The project would always have critics alongside supporters. 3 years after first contact, Sarah stood in the observation deck, watching the Wanderer vessel that had become permanent fixture near Meridian. Younger crew members had joined the station who couldn't remember time before the post-physical being's arrival. For them, Wanderer presence was normal part of reality, rather than revolutionary development. "Strange to think this is our new normal," Yuki commented, joining Sarah at the viewport. "When I was in academy, we thought finding alien life would be ultimate discovery. Turns out it's just the beginning of longer journey understanding consciousness itself." Sarah smiled at her science officer's evolution from cautious researcher to enthusiastic explorer. "Do you ever regret getting involved?" "Never," Yuki answered without hesitation. "This work will echo through history long after we're gone. We're part of something that transcends individual lives and connects civilizations across evolutionary stages. How many people get to say they helped reshape the galaxy's understanding of what's possible?" The observation proved accurate, as reports arrived of similar contact events in distant regions, where other post-physical civilizations emerged from isolation to seek connection with biological beings, the phenomenon spreading as if consciousness itself was reaching toward new forms of understanding across the universe. The Wanderers suggested that humanity's example had inspired others who transcended physical form to reconsider isolation. "Your species demonstrated that biological and post-physical beings can interact beneficially," they explained. "Other entities who achieve transcendence are now seeking similar connections. You may have triggered movement toward galaxy-wide consciousness cooperation." Sarah felt weight of responsibility, but also profound satisfaction. Humanity hadn't conquered the stars through military might or economic dominance, but through demonstrating that compassion and curiosity could bridge even the most fundamental differences between forms of existence. She filed her final report to Earth authorities while watching stars beyond the station, aware that her career would be remembered for this moment, regardless of what came after. Research Station Meridian reporting successful establishment of sustainable exchange between biological and post-physical civilizations, she recorded. Recommend continued support for expansion with careful monitoring of ethical implications. Humanity has proven we can serve as bridge between different forms of consciousness, suggesting our role in galactic community may be facilitating connection rather than pursuing dominance. The message transmitted across light years toward Earth, where decisions would be made by people who couldn't fully appreciate what had developed. At Meridian. But Sarah trusted that future generations would understand. The work continued, with new species arriving daily to learn from wanderers, while sharing their own perspectives on existence. Marcus organized cultural festivals where biological beings and energy entities collaborated on art that combined physical and non-physical elements. Shen expanded consciousness projection training to include advanced techniques that let participants experience reality from perspectives impossible for embodied beings. Yuki's archive grew daily with contributions from across the network. The lead wanderer manifested beside Sarah unexpectedly, its form now refined through practice into something genuinely beautiful. Thank you for maintaining faith in this project, despite challenges. It communicated with warmth that required no translation. You and your crew have given us a gift we didn't know we needed, reminding us that existence without connection lacks meaning, regardless of how long it persists. Sarah accepted the gratitude while reflecting on what humanity had gained. We've learned that transcendence isn't abandoning what makes us biological, but expanding our understanding to include perspectives we couldn't access before. You've shown us that evolution can mean growth rather than replacement. They stood together in silence that felt comfortable rather than awkward. Biological and post-physical beings, sharing a moment of connection that bridged millions of years of divergent development. Outside the viewport, stars blazed in ancient patterns, while consciousness in its various forms continued exploring what it meant to exist. The story of Meridian Station and humanity's first contact with the Wanderers would be told for generations, inspiring new civilizations to reach beyond limitations and seek understanding across boundaries that seemed insurmountable, proving that the galaxy's greatest discoveries emerged not from conquest, but from willingness to connect with beings profoundly different from ourselves.